What's up, boys and girls? Kevin from the Burgundy Brigade here to round out our last installment of your guide for playoff bandwagons. The first two videos we went through, and there are links in the description below if you're just coming in on this one. We talked about the favorites, the ones who the experts would be most likely to pick to go all the way and win the Stanley Cup, or to go really, really deep in the playoffs. And then the last video we did talked about the perennials, the teams that are always in the playoffs. Sometimes they go deep, sometimes they don't. But whatever happens, they're always in there. So if you want to check out either of those two videos, the links, like I said, are down in the description. Today we're going to focus on the last two types of teams in the playoffs, and we're going to start with the feel-good stories. These are the teams that are kind of easy to cheer for because nobody expected them to be here. The fans maybe haven't seen the playoffs in a long time. And it's just a team that you're just happy that they're there. And they're easy to cheer for, and there's not a lot of pressure when it comes to being on this bandwagon because, frankly, people are expecting there to be more of a bandwagon for this group. Let's look at first the Calgary Flames. Calgary is one of the top feel-good stories of this year. Nobody expected the Flames to be anywhere near the playoffs this season. They've had a lot of good things go their way, and they've frankly been the team that you could most relate to, the little engine that could all season long. They've been down, they just won't go away. They managed to steal games that they never should have won, and just be a thorn in a lot of teams' side. And they did it all season long and managed to earn themselves a playoff spot for the first time in forever. So we've got to give them credit for being where they are. It's really easy to cheer for them, and it's really easy to be happy for this fan base. They haven't been anywhere near a Stanley Cup since before the lockout in 2004. So it's nice to see Calgary relevant again. Another team that's really hot right now and is really a very cool story is the Ottawa Senators. Ottawa was left for dead with about 30 games left in the regular season. They needed a miraculous run and a whole lot of help in order to get into the playoffs, and they got both. They went on this huge run, and they got a lot of help. It ignited their fan base, and they're on a huge hot streak, and they're probably the team that nobody wants to play right now because they've lost about 4 times in their last 30 games. Plus, they've got surprise performances from a young goaltender who now also has one of the best nicknames in the game, the Hamburglar. The fans have even gotten to throwing fast food on the ice to salute their newfound hero. So, I mean, what's not fun about that? Which is and this is, of course, much better than having jerseys being thrown on the ice in some of these other arenas. You know who I'm talking about. So if you're wanting another group that's easy to root for and one who you can't really feel bad about rooting for because they're just taking you on an amazing ride of excitement right now, the Ottawa Senators could be for you. Of these feel-good stories, the last two are probably the ones that are least likely to get your vote. The Nashville Predators, they've sort of been a playoff team for a while. They fell out for the last few seasons, but now they're back, but in a way that nobody expected. People didn't think the Predators were going to make the playoffs this season, and the Predators were at the top of the Central Division for most of this season. They've got a few new players, they got a new coach, some good young talent, and they finally had their goaltender healthy for the majority of the season, and it all propelled them to the 2nd seed in the Central Division. They're a fun team to watch, much more fun than they used to be. Then they're going to be locked into a really exciting series, but it's hard to tell exactly how far they'll go. They did cool down a little bit towards the end of the year. They don't have a lot of playoff experience. This might be one of the teams that, even though they're a higher seed with home ice advantage, that you might expect to see get ousted in the first round. And also, if team colors matter to you, which, you know, I don't know what you use to judge for who you attach yourself to, but these disturbingly bright yellow jerseys might keep you away from this team. The last of these feel-good stories is the Winnipeg Jets. And for this one, obviously, you feel good for the team, but this case, I think you feel even better for the fan base. It's similar to Calgary, where the team hasn't really been relevant for a long time. But what's different is that the original Winnipeg Jets actually were relocated out of Winnipeg after the 1995-96 season, down to what is now the Arizona Coyotes. And that team hasn't seen the playoffs. This team, the Winnipeg team, has not seen the playoffs since that 95-96 year. Mostly because the Jets, when Winnipeg did get a team back, they inherited the defunct Atlanta Thrashers, which were frankly a pretty bad team. And even though that team was pretty bad, these fans have been out and present at every game. They're loud, they're rambunctious, they're a terribly, terribly difficult home crowd to play against. And they've finally got a playoff team again. So you can imagine the spectacle and the way the city is going to be, and the fanfare and all that is going to be pretty spectacular when a playoff game finally comes back to Winnipeg for these guys. So you're really happy for the fan base, but again, the D-bag factor is really high with the Jets. There's a lot of seriously douchey players on this team. But we can leave that aside for this year because it's such an exciting thing to have a Winnipeg team back in the playoffs. There is one more feel-good story, but I kind of hesitate to call them necessarily the feel-goods because they're a team that you kind of saw this coming. You kind of saw this in their development, but they're feel-good because it's the first time for a while. The New York Islanders, they have some of the best collection of talent. Like I said, a lot of people could see this coming, could see the Islanders being a good team, but it's been so long since the Islanders have been not just in the playoffs, but where they've really been a team that you think could go deep into the playoffs. And this year, it's finally that again. Every other season for the last few years that they've made the playoffs, it's been, well, they'll probably, they may give the team a fight, but they expect to go out in the first round. This year, you could see the Islanders making some serious noise. In fact, there's a lot of people looking forward to a potential second-round series of the New York Rangers and the New York Islanders. That one might be the series to watch of the entire Stanley Cup playoffs when that comes around. Now, I don't really have a real specific category for these last two teams. I just call them the others, but I do have names for them. There's the Tampa Bay Lightning, who used to be a perennial team. The last couple seasons, they've sort of struggled here and there. They've had a couple really bad seasons, and then they've built it back up. So you could say they're a feel-good. I'm calling them a tweener. They're not perennials. They're not really quite favorites. But you also are the team. They're also a team that you do kind of expect something from, and so you expect it. So they're not necessarily a feel-good story. They're somewhere in between all of that. So we call them a tweener. So much talent on this team, but it's hard to know exactly how far they'll go because the team is very young and doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. Tampa could go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, or they could drop out in the first round. There's really a lot unknown there. But they'll be exciting to watch, which is definitely not a bad bandwagon to get on right now because they have so much potential and really could surprise a lot of people. All right, well, we've covered a lot of teams, and I've given you pretty good reasons, I think, to follow pretty much any single one of these. And there's only one that I would beg and plead anybody to stay away from at all costs. And it's the last one, the last team that we will cover, the Minnesota Wild. Now, the Minnesota Wild, as I said, this is the only bandwagon I would beg you to avoid. This is a team whose fan base is completely, totally, overly entitled. They have never won anything since their inception, yet they are convinced they are the end-all, be-all of hockey. They think their farts don't stink, all of that stuff. They boo anytime contact is made with one of their players, and no penalty is called. Any type of contact, regardless of how clean it is. They cheer when members of opposing teams get injured, and basically are convinced that the only reason they ever lose anytime ever is because the officiating is out to get them. Plus, this is a team that probably plays the most boring brand of hockey of any team in the NHL. And I'm talking about teams that this is worse than teams who have only won 25 games throughout the year. It's still the mid-90s dead puck era in Minnesota. So please, for the love of God, if you wish to maintain your soul as a human being, avoid that bandwagon at all costs. So, thank you for watching this video. Please choose your bandwagons wisely and enjoy the Stanley Cup playoffs.